Some reasons this happens are: people are unclear about the goals of the meeting. They're not focused on these goals. They do not have the necessary information to make decisions during the meeting. What do we do?
Before the meeting, ensure that people are clear about the purpose and goals of the meeting. Do this by sending out a meeting agenda at least a day before the meeting. In the agenda, state specific items for discussion in the form of questions instead of topics. This helps people to focus on the expected outcome of the meeting. As soon as these questions have been answered, the meeting is deemed to have achieved its objectives.
Then, at the start of the meeting, clearly state the purpose and expected outcomes of the meeting. There can be several reasons for this. Some people do not speak up much at meetings because they have not fully formulated their thoughts yet and are reluctant to voice half-complete thoughts for fear of losing face. What can we do?
Send out a meeting agenda at least a day before the meeting. In the meeting agenda, state the purpose of the meeting and the items to be discussed and questions to be answered at the meeting. Such a meeting agenda will enable people to think and formulate their thoughts and plan what to say before the meeting. This can help them to feel more ready to speak up at the meeting. In addition, in the meeting agenda, get people involved in the meeting by assigning tasks to them so they have something to bring to the meeting.
Another reason people do not speak up in meetings is because they do not feel safe to do so. They may be afraid that others may laugh or reject their ideas. They may be afraid to ask crucial questions because they are afraid that others may think those are stupid questions. What can we do?
We need to create a meeting environment where people feel safe to speak up. In other words, we need to create what Google calls psychological safety. We can do this in two ways: through ostentatious listening and conversational turn-taking.
Scan this QR code to find out how to practice ostentatious listening and conversational turn-taking in meetings. Hold on. Before we express our disagreement, we need to consider these three questions. Is it worth disagreeing in the first place? Do I have sufficient solid evidence or strong enough reasons to support my disagreement? Is this the right time and place to express my disagreement?
If, after considering these three questions, we decide that we do want to voice our disagreement, then we need to strategize what we are going to say so that we'll have a higher chance of having our views considered seriously.
The first step is to establish common ground. We can do this by stating the common goal that we, the boss in the meeting, has so that they know that we're working with them and not against them. Then validate the original point. This shows them that we understand their point so that there won't be an argument about whether or not we have understood their point. Next, explain that we have a different perspective. This acts as a buffer to prepare them to hear a different perspective. Then, explain the reason for our disagreement. Leading with the rationale helps them follow our thought process. If we are able to provide strong evidence and reasons, we have a higher chance of leading them to the same conclusion that we have made. Finally, we state our suggestion.
Here's another example. Let's say the meeting is discussing mental wellness activities for the staff, and Kim suggested hiking. The boss says,
"No, hiking's not a good idea. You have to buy proper shoes, a hat, maybe even a walking stick. Then there's mosquitoes to worry about, and snakes and even crocodiles these days. It's really stressful."
Jason's an avid hiker and he doesn't think that hiking is stressful. Here's how he responded.
I see what you mean. Hiking does sound stressful in that sense. I don't necessarily agree entirely though. I know many people enjoy hiking because it de-stresses them. And I've seen research that shows that physical exercise actually helps to reduce stress and depression among some people. So, what this tells us is that different people de-stress in different ways. Which means we may need to consider offering more than one type of activity if we want to appeal to everyone.
Oh, and one more thing. Frequently, when expressing disagreement, our tone is likely to cause a bigger reaction than the content of what we're saying. Often, speaking at a slower pace and using an even tone, as if we are thinking aloud, can have a calming effect. We want to be careful about inadvertently giving the impression that our view is better than others. In other words, when disagreeing with someone more senior, it may be prudent to avoid conveying judgment in our responses. For example,
I see what you mean, but wouldn't this be bad for staff morale?
Using but could convey the impression that we think our view is superior or their idea is flawed. Other similar expressions that could sound judgmental include,
Don't you think we should? Shouldn't we? I think it's better if we.
remember, our job is to provide the meeting with sufficient information and perspective for informed decision-making. If, despite our best efforts, our bosses in the meeting decides to not follow our suggestion, our job is to still carry out the boss's or the meeting's decisions. Unless, of course, if these wishes are illegal or unethical, in such cases, the right thing to do is to stand firmly by our principles. Scan this QR code to find out more.